Chapter 3. The River. When Kenworth entered the little kitchen entryway the next morning, Martha was already preparing breakfast. Or, at least that's how she remembered it when I interviewed her in the spring of 1876. She was one of the first people I talked to about Kenworth. I came into her acquaintance through a chance encounter that March. I was writing a piece about failed port cities for the Southern Inquirer, and Piddle was second on my list. I arrived on a Thursday afternoon and found myself looking for documents at their little shack that masqueraded as a courthouse. I came across a wanted poster for a man with dark eyes and a burdened face. He'd been convicted of murder and kidnapping, and there was a bounty on him for $5,000. I asked the first person I saw what they knew about him. Martha was there, retrieving a package, and she remembered all too well the wanted man. She had cooked him breakfast. Reluctant to talk to a strange white woman about him, she avoided me until I told her I liked her dress. I imagined the smell of oats had passed under Kenworth's door and woken him, though Martha probably thought it was the clanging of pots. I told Ernest it wasn't a good idea to let him stay, she informed me, and then said, "But that man never listens." She said Kenworth had been cold when he visited. Not cold like ice that dangles from a roof on a snowy day, but cold like the look in the eyes of a deer, one that stands at the edge of a field and hesitates before crossing. She said that he mumbled, "Good morning," as he drifted out of the guest bedroom. He looked like he hadn't slept much. Martha told him, "Ernest just went outside," and Kenworth said, "Thank you, ma'am, for letting me stay." She said she didn't answer at first. She didn't want to like Kenworth. Felt like she knew he would be trouble before trouble came. But when she looked at him, she didn't see a broken man. She saw someone's son, maybe someone's husband. She exhaled softly and said, "You can thank Ernest. The man's more hopeful than I am. And good luck. Enton sharp as a knife." She told me I'd have to talk to her husband, or Timmy, the ferryman, if I wanted to know what happened after that. Ernest, her husband, was rarely pleasant to deal with, and I think that was in large part because of what Kenworth did. I don't blame him much. But since he usually didn't like talking to me, I asked Timothy Campbell's flat bottom put in upstream from Piddle. He said doing this let the river help push the boat from one side to the other. His crew would hoist the boat onto a cart. Then their little donkey, Eddie, would haul said cart a mile upstream to where a dock lay hidden among the reeds. The boat would be lowered into the water and loaded with crates and barrels of sundry goods from the people of Piddle, which they hoped to sell in Enton. But, by my description of Piddle, you can imagine that they were never very successful. Timmy and his brother Titus always called me the reporter. I preferred them calling me Miss Thompson, but they thought it was funnier that way, and it let me ask questions that I might not have been able to otherwise. So that worked out well for me. With a push and a farewell, Timmy's youngest son, Jedediah, would watch as the boat lazily carried Kenworth and the crew away. They would gain ground, they would lose ground, they would curse and laugh and promise that one day they would have a steamboat. Jedediah climbed up onto the back of the cart, grabbed hold of the reins. "Yah!" he yelled and flicked his wrists. Eddie traveled only slightly faster than the boat, and before long he was out of sight. Kenworth had offered to help Timmy, but the ship's captain would not allow it. "No passenger of mine is going to paddle," he said, smiling. The river swelled in a few places from the rain the night before. White, frothy water swirled, swallowing up the loose grass and young trees on the riverbanks. Timmy had said that Kenworth usually stood tense in the middle of the boat, eyeing the men as they casually leaned over the side. "You like catfish, no name?" Titus, Timmy's younger brother, asked after a little fish jumped out of the water. "Much as anybody else, I suppose," Kenworth said. "I've seen river cats in this water, bigger than gators, but they're awfully hard to catch." "Why are you lying, boy?" Timmy asked. "One thing I can't stand, and that's a liar." "Well, when you've been fishing where I have, you can see for yourself. Until then, it's my lie. I'll tell it how I want to." "What kind of child did you raise?" Timmy asked the sky, shaking his head. "Where have you been fishing that I ain't?" "Down near Piney Ridge. Cooper and I caught hold of a gar that nearly pulled us in." "I've no use for gar," Timmy said, and then, "But catfish, you know what's hard for me to understand? No matter how dirty they are, you catch 'em, clean 'em, fry 'em, they're better than almost anything in the river." "You know who makes the best catfish?" Titus broke in again. "Who's that?" Timmy asked, huffing in frustration. "Old Lady Isabella." "Boy, I told you not to be seeing that lady," Timmy said, and smacked Titus with the long wooden oar. "Ow! Keep that thing to yourself, and I'll see who I want to see. I'm a man now. I make my own decisions. You're still my little brother, still getting paid by me. Remember that, boy. As long as that's true, you need to do what I say." Titus was quiet after that. Kenworth didn't mind. It gave him space to listen to the river and enjoy the songbirds. Little brown cliff swallows with white bellies and streaks of brown flitted out from the bluffs as they neared Enton. They soared up, dove low, then lifted again just before touching the water. The mansions sitting on the hilltop came into view. Large Victorian homes with sweeping porches and enormous windows that looked down at the struggling men. Kenworth remembered that they felt to him like faces, all seeing, but never helping, untouched by the river. A dock reached out into the muddy water, crowded with weary men on whose backs Enton was built. Timmy tied the boat off and jumped out. Kenworth followed. Titus stayed to hand the barrels and crates to Kenworth and Timmy. "This is where we always part, No Name." Timmy offered his hand when they had finished. "Thank you," Kenworth said. "I hope someday I can return the favor." "I occasionally take payment in friendship and good company." He smiled and heaved one of the barrels up onto his shoulder. "I hope you find what you're looking for this time. Farewell, stranger." Kenworth smiled and turned away from the man. Maybe he should have stayed with him. The dock below Enton bustled with other little ferries and small steamboats. Men in straw hats like Timmy's carried an endless parade of cargo up a white wooden staircase to the top of the bluffs. The staircase was freshly painted and held firm under the weight of the heavy boots and loaded barrels. The clean planks led Kenworth above the red clay mud, above storks and alligators, above scattered cypress trees, willows, and cottonwoods, and, at the top of the stairs, the roar of the river died, muffled by the distance. The smell of wet moss gave way to trimmed hedges and sun-warmed grass. The air was cleaner, still, dry. From the top of the cliffs, Kenworth could see Piddle, Blightwood, and a handful of other little settlements west of the river. Smoke rose from the chimneys, and the endless fields around them blurred into a haze. And when he turned, he was met with green lawns and painted porches. The grass was thick like carpet, and he watched children laugh and climb up ancient live oaks with hanging moss that seemed to hug them. The people who passed nodded to him and said, "Howdy," or "Good day." The people who sat on their porches waved as they smoked cigars and drank tea from delicate ceramic cups. Round bushes full of flowers sat in front of the houses. They held clouds of pink and flushes of orange and puffs of purple. Kenworth thought even the sky seemed lighter there, above the river. He looked again at the children. Little boys in clean trousers and white linen shirts. Little girls with yellow and pink dresses and bonnets. Lace gloves and shiny black shoes. But standing behind them, under the shade of the live oaks, a handful of colored women watched silently. Their eyes followed the children, but they never spoke, and never looked toward Kenworth. "Excuse us, sir," a strained voice said as Kenworth stepped aside. Two colored men passed, struggling under the weight of an ornate piece of furniture. They turned up a side path and disappeared around the back of one of the houses. White men lounged on porches all around him, sipping from delicate glasses slick with condensation, the cold tea inside catching the light. They seemed unaware of the men below them, who carried heavy barrels and cumbersome crates and awkward pieces of furniture. "You worthless sack," a man growled. He was on one of the porches nearby. The shirt of his slave balled in his fists. A saucer lay shattered on the boards, cake in a crumpled heap at their feet. No one seemed to notice. "What are you gawking at, bird dog?" he snapped at Kenworth. "Back from across the river already? Why don't you stick to hunting for Blant and mind your own business?" Kenworth said he could not help but let a scowl form on his face. He walked on past the row of houses until the path widened to the public square where shops and cafes stood neatly along the edges. Well-dressed women strolled casually from storefront to storefront, laughing and smiling, their slave hands trailing behind them like shadows. "Mr. Kenworth?" A voice with exaggerated twang broke out. "Mr. Kenworth?" He turned to see a young colored man looking at him. The man was dressed better than Kenworth. He wore a light brown suit with a vest buttoned all the way. His white shirt was pressed and a brown bow tie sat right below his neck. "Mr. Blant's been waiting on you to get back. Heard you finished your job a few days ago." "Have we met?" Kenworth asked him. "Well, certainly, Mr. Kenworth. You don't recognize me? It's me, Sylvan." "And what did you call me?" "Well, Mr. Blant and everyone else calls you Mr. Kenworth, so I'm just doing like them. I didn't mean nothing by it, sir." "That's all right. I wasn't meaning that." Kenworth shook his head. "Is Blant the one who sent me this letter?" Kenworth asked and dug through his pocket for the little crumpled note. "Yes, sir. He always sends one for you." "Well, really, he always sends me. I'm happy to go. Gets me away from... Well, never mind," he said and looked down, hesitating. I'm just happy to go. I like talking to Viddy over in Blightwood. Funny guy. And I'm seeing a girl outside of Enton in a place called Cheers Gap." His face reddened and he began muttering, I didn't mean to say that. Please don't tell Mr. Blant, sir." "Mr. Blant is waiting on me to visit?" Kenworth asked, ignoring the young man's request. "Yes, sir. As soon as you can. He'll probably be upset if he knows you came to town and didn't see him." "Where does he live?" The young man frowned for a moment and tilted his head. "Sir, you know where Mr. Blant lives. You always visit." You're right, I know," Kenworth lied. "But what I meant was, can you escort me there? Maybe you can carry these clothes for me?" He produced the crumpled ball of bloody fabric and handed it to him. "Yes, sir," Sylvan said eagerly, taking the clothes. Something in Kenworth flinched. He then started walking away from the square. "Mr. Kenworth, can you tell me about your adventures?" he called over his shoulder. "I'm afraid I don't have any," Kenworth said quietly, straining to remember anything before Blightwood. "Well, I've been on a few myself, that is, whenever Master Blant lets me." "Does that happen very often?" Kenworth asked him with a hint of surprise. "Not as often as I like, but I won't complain. I have it better than some folks." "You live with Mr. Blant?" "Well, certainly, sir. I've lived in this house since my mother died. Master Blant says I'm right useful to him." "I'm sure," Kenworth said, though his voice held a note of doubt. He wasn't yet sure what kind of man he was about to meet. They reached the end of a row of houses where a red horse stood hitched to a carriage. "So what adventures have you been on?" Kenworth asked as they climbed in. I think it did Kenworth good that the young man was all too happy to oblige.